What's up, everybody? I'm Cameron Bertuzzi, back talking about another objection to Christian belief. This one comes from Joe Rogan on his podcast, The Rogan Experience. It was streamed just over a month ago, and it already has over 1 million views. I was actually watching this video because I wanted to interact with some of the thoughts of Michael Shermer, but then Joe Rogan kind of like spouted off randomly, and so I just felt like it deserved a response. So let's take a quick look at this objection.
Even though it's nonsense, just... so is most religion. Let's just be honest. I mean,
Right.
If you want to talk about guys coming back from the dead after being buried for 3 days, or Adam and Eve being the only two people and they have kids and their kids just start having sex with each other and that makes all the people in the world, or Moses parting the Red Sea and Jesus walking on water. I mean, you're looking at everywhere. It's just older. It's, you know, whether or not it's based on some real events or some real people, who knows? Who knows? You know, but it's all nonsense.
Just so you know, I've posted the transcript of this objection in the description of the video. I find that instead of just like listening to what someone says, actually analyzing the words, like the content, is a much better way of analyzing what someone is saying. Vocal features like tone and inflection and visual features like facial expressions can be rhetorically or emotionally compelling, but they can also get in the way of like the actual logic of what's being said. So once we do that, once we get past like all the rhetoric and stuff that's present obviously in this clip, like go read the transcript for yourself. Really all Joe's doing is he's expressing his incredulity about miracles. That's basically it. And on some level, I get that. Like, the Bible does have some kind of bizarre sounding stories. But let's think logically about this, right? We want to think logically. So imagine a Christian kind of expressing their incredulity about evolution. Evolution is nonsense. Let's be honest. I mean, if you want to talk about humans and bananas having a common ancestor, or all of this biological complexity coming from like the most simple organism, or life coming from non-life. I mean, you're looking at nonsense everywhere. All right, let's get back to reality here. Would that refute evolution? I mean, it might even sound compelling, but the logic behind it isn't there. There's none there, actually. Saying that you personally find something unbelievable is really just you describing your mental state to somebody else. It says nothing about like what's actually true in the world. But let's take the charitable route here and suppose that he's not just like expressing his incredulity about miracles. Instead, he's making a claim about miracles, namely that they're just like really inherently unlikely. First, let's note that it's pretty unreasonable to assert that miracles are impossible. If God exists, then he is ultimately the reason that reality is the way that it is. And if God is the ground of all reality, then obviously he can do miracles. So in other words, miracles are only impossible if God is impossible. Second, it's one thing to claim that miracles are unlikely, and it's another thing entirely to actually prove that. Like, what's the actual argument that Jesus didn't raise from the dead? What's the argument that Moses didn't part the Red Sea? Calling something unlikely or being incredulous about it doesn't suddenly like make it unlikely. Third, even if we assume that miracles are just inherently unlikely, it doesn't follow that they never happen. For example, the likelihood that my home that I'm in right now would be situated on this exact piece of land is astronomically unlikely. Like, it could have been an inch to the left, it could have been an inch to the right, it could have been a mile down the road, it could have been in Africa. So even though it's like really inherently unlikely that my house is on this exact plot of land, you can still believe me when I tell you that, hey, I live in this neighborhood. So here's my point. It doesn't matter how inherently unlikely something is. What matters are your reasons for thinking that it's true. And so just like I have really good reason to think that my house is on this exact plot of land, I have good reason to think both that God exists and that Christianity is true. On God's existence, I'm convinced at this point that the argument from contingency is rationally unassailable. And if it works, then a perfect being, aka God, actually exists. If you'd like my argument for that, then check for the link in the description. And on Jesus rising from the dead, I think there are several historical facts about Jesus' life, like his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate, the discovery of his empty tomb by women, the appearances of Jesus to his disciples and groups of people, that are best explained by God raising Jesus from the dead. So look, this is a really short video, so don't expect this like really long defense of both of these arguments. But if you'd like to see my lengthy defense of them, just check the links in the description. So my major point here is that even if something seems like inherently unlikely on the surface, so long as you have good reasons to think that that thing is true, then there's no problem. And if you think about it, lots of scientific ideas start out this way too. Like no one would have just guessed that the objects we interact with on a daily basis are made up of mostly empty space. But now that we have good reason to think that atomic theory is true, that's what most of us believe. All right, so let's summarize the points in this response. The first point was that expressing incredulity about miracles is not an argument that miracles can't happen. Second, miracles are only impossible if God is impossible. Third, calling something unlikely doesn't suddenly make it unlikely. And fourth, lots of things are actually inherently unlikely. What matters is whether you have good reasons to think that they're true. Well, that does it for this response. If you guys have any objections to what I've said in this video, please leave them in the comments. I actually love reading all the comments, even if they're by atheists. So please do that. Also, don't forget that if you go to patreon.com/capturingchristianity, you can get early access to all of our videos like this. You can also gain early access to our podcast episodes and every article that's posted on our website. So again, just go to patreon.com/capturingchristianity. And please help support us and help grow this ministry to have the biggest impact that it can. All right, guys, I'll see you later.